educators who see the big picture. 13 schools, 8 grades, my education photograph started to fade. And no snapshots or backdrops could explain my boredom. These antique techniques they tried to teach me wasn't reaching me, though my report card said I was passing. And my teachers were walking contradictions, as they told me to follow my dreams, but they retained my convictions as they signed their names only to my detention, snapped their fingers in hopes to gain my attention, shoved textbooks in my hands, and gave tests in hopes that my retention would get them to a tenure track position. They were training my millennial mind to the Industrial Revolution. By my freshman year, I was crucified between standardized tests and report cards. My want for knowledge was fading like a dull number 2 pencil. I couldn't make a mark on the Scantron, and we all know what happens when you don't fill that bubble. My picture had no life, no focus, like the zoom button was broken. My education was superficial. Surface learning with a school credential leads to nothing but bad photography, leaving misguided lines and faded spots, red eyes and cut corners, and my schools were cutting corners, destroying my abstract beauty. The mind is a terrible thing to waste. So they decided that to recycle was better. Green initiatives educate more than our public schools, and the inner city schools just chose to buy more dumpsters. My need for a good picture brought me to the big picture, an abstract masterpiece, like a diamond in the rough despite the education catastrophe, except this time I wasn't asked to be in a photo. Instead, I was given the camera, told to focus the lens however I saw fit, with a one student at a time mantra, but no students wait in line to get a good shot. See, we are picked out of a lottery, pulling levers like we're slots, names drawn from a box. Somehow I got to this spot. And my teachers stopped teaching me in hopes to reach me. They started reaching me to teach me, digging through albums of miseducation, past rolls of regurgitation, breaking the lens of my self-framed limitations. I became the big picture. That was good. You guys are great audience members. A 10 for all of you. 10, 10, 10. First, I would like to say thank you for the nominations I got from my principal and an advisor who actually wasn't my advisor. She was the advisor next door to me, and sort of, it's kind of sweet. She said she watched me grow from next door, and so it was kind of I'm very happy to be accepting this award. As of right now, I'm currently a senior in College Unbound, headed into my senior year. Woo, woo. And very happy to be doing that. So let me get back to my story. So as a background, 13 schools, yes, I went to 13 schools before my freshman year of high school. I spent my 3 consecutive years was at Med East, the Big Picture High School. And so I'm here to tell you, I went to private school, inner city schools, public suburban schools, and they're all the same. They all pretty much suck. And I had 3 teachers that I remembered, and I remembered them for 3 very different reasons, which sort of got me the big picture in a way. My first grade teacher, she taught me, she was the first person who challenged me past what I was already doing. She was the first person who gave me chapter books without pictures. And so this was a big deal for me because I felt like a big kid reading these books. And my 4th grade teacher, the first teacher to teach math that made sense, multiplication. It's the only thing I still use. So she was the first teacher not to really lie to me. And my 9th grade teacher, this woman's a little different from the other 2. She gave me the push to sort of leave regular traditional schools. She was the first teacher that denied me more homework. And I didn't understand. Went to the open house, they tried to show off for the parents. They dressed nice little tablecloths. And she asked me, said, if you could change anything about the class, what would you change? And I said, I sort of kind of need more homework. I'm a little bored when I go home. And we were reading Animal Farm at like a kindergarten pace, 5 pages a week. And I was ahead. I had finished the book, and I found myself struggling, trying to backtrack to keep up with the rest of the class. And I was like, okay, maybe if she speeds the book up. But she said no. She looked at me like I grew a 3rd eyeball and asked, do you know what my other students would do if I gave them more homework? I'm looking at her like, I don't care. And so she was the teacher who pushed me out of traditional schools, literally. Happened to be basketball season was starting soon, which was ironic enough that my freshman advisor was my basketball coach before he was my advisor. And one day we were driving home from practice, and I was venting to him. I said, I can't take this school right now. I get one worksheet a day. There's 28 kids in my class, and only 11 show up, and I'm always that constant one. They're different every time. And he said, really? Because I teach at a school where all the students come to class. They love class. They only go to school 3 days a week. I was already sold there. And so I was like, really? All right, let's go. And so I spent my time researching because the 3 days a week got a little scary. You know, I was looking for a better school, and I really didn't understand the 3 days a week, as good as it sounds. Did my research over the summer, signed up, bam, Med-East. Med-East really started to change how I thought about learning. It was the first place where I really started questioning things that were given to me. My very first question, as you could imagine, went back to my 9th grade teacher, like, I don't understand why you thought that was cool not to give me more homework. But I moved on from questions like that, and then I got into my project questions. One of my projects for sophomore year, I worked at a daycare where they separated the students with asthma and the students without asthma. And the students with asthma couldn't do the same things the students without asthma did. And I didn't understand that. I knew people in my family who had asthma, and I felt like the limitations weren't the same. And so that was one of the first questions I started working on. That became a project. That became my gateway project. I got to my senior year, had heard about College Unbound since my sophomore year, and when you get opened up to the big picture philosophy, it's really hard to sort of backtrack to the untraditional side, but at the same time, you sort of want that pop culture idea of what college is. So I sort of had that tug and pull in my mind of, do you really want to go to a college that was the same as your high school? Or do you want to go to a college that is different, parties, yeah, all that on that side. And so I really had this tug and pull. I remember sitting in an office with Jenkins, and he was like, are you crazy? Will you take this opportunity? It'll open your doors to so many things. And then I realized it was time for me to go to College Unbound. Since I've been at College Unbound, going into my freshman year of College Unbound, I still went with questions. I still had questions, but I figured, all right, I'm going into college now. Maybe some of these questions will start to get answered because I get a degree here. Not the case. The questions sort of changed a little bit. My freshman year, I started questioning myself. You know, in college, you sort of start relearning how to do everything, including read. And from a kid who's been reading chapter books since first grade, it's like, wait, I knew how to read. And then you start learning that you need to read with a pencil and a pen and start taking notes. And it sort of threw my world upside down. In my freshman fall, I felt like I was going to drop out of school. I didn't understand why I wasn't getting this program that was the same as my high school. But it wasn't. And so it wasn't until my summer that we all had the opportunity to travel abroad. We all were supposed to travel abroad. And so my abroad experience was in Brazil. Brazil. And my fear that year, which is still a little bit of fear, but I've been on like 15 planes since, I was afraid of flying. So I said, I'm going to pick the spot closest to the U.S. The map in our house, it looks like Brazil's really close. But it's like 19 hours of flight. Like my roommate went to China and I flew longer than him. So with that decision, I found myself in Brazil. And it was great. You know, I had this foreign experience. I was working with toddlers. I'm really into children, if you guys hadn't noticed yet. I was working with toddlers, and I felt like the language barrier between them was so much easier to get. And that was really what I took from the trip. And so I left that trip, and every time I leave something, I'd spend the next week or two processing. So I spent that week, that boring week at home sort of processing before I got back into school, like what went great about the trip, what went wrong about the trip. And I really was sort of disappointed in myself because I didn't go to the trip with any goals besides having this fear of flying. So Brazil was sort of picked off of me limiting myself, thinking that I was like this driver in my education, but I really wasn't. And I know at Big Picture we always push, you know, be the driver to your learning. And I thought I had already figured that out because I was heading into my sophomore year of college at Big Picture. but I didn't. And so I think what really upset me about that summer, I realized I was in the back seat. And so I made sort of a vow to myself to somehow get to that front seat position before the end of my junior year and for my next summer. And I'm glad to say that this past summer, I spent my summer in San Francisco. I just got back actually 2 days ago. And I spent my summer working with Youth Speaks. They're a spoken word education program that is, look, they're shaking their heads because they're known all across the world. These kids are so dope with words. That's just the word that you got to use to explain like that California swag word. But they're just very intelligent. You have 13-year-olds standing on stage talking to you about poverty in a way that politicians couldn't even explain it. And how I got there was that fall after Brazil, I went in and I said, what am I really passionate about, right? What do I really care about? And the only thing that I could backtrack to was all my experiences, what came good from them, what came good from Brazil was my blog, my creative writing, me writing. That was the best part of my year. So I put that writing into my curriculum and I said, I want to do a spoken word group. I didn't really know how to do that in fall, so it sort of was shaky until the spring. And so this is when my group, Voices Encouraging Nonviolent Thinking, came about. We call it VENT for short. I'm an intern at the Institute for the Study and Practice of Nonviolence currently. And what we do is we train people in the community in Martin Luther King's theories and principles of nonviolence. I train middle schools, high schools, colleges. And so this was my way of saying, I'm going to be in the driver's seat. And so I spent my fall. I felt like I was in the driver's seat. Wasn't there yet. I was there, but I was like sort of in that car with like the student cars where like you got a person hitting the brake. And so, but that person hitting the brake wasn't Doc. It wasn't one of my advisors or anything. It was me. I was hitting the brake. I was the one. Wait, hold up. Slow down there. You're going too fast. Slow down, all right? And so I was getting familiar with the wheel and the clutch and how to drive things. And it wasn't until fall and summer that I felt myself start going on the course alone and sort of letting off of that brake. Follow me with this metaphor here. All right. So I was like being a permit driver, and we all know how that goes. And so I noticed, and then reflection of this past trip, for me, it was something that I had planned. And that was what made the difference from Brazil. I went into San Francisco with this idea that I want to finish building this curriculum. The curriculum, by the way, is a 12-week curriculum, 4 days a week. I've been working really hard on it. And so I said, I'm going to go on with this curriculum. I have all of these spoken word gurus around me. I'm going to ask them as much questions as I need to. And the trip got a little fuzzy at sometimes. It got a little rough being all the way out there. San Francisco is a very different vibe. And so that was my plan. That was my goal. And I left accomplishing all of the goals that I set out to be. And that's what really made the difference in my year. And so I'm going to leave you guys with this. You guys thought you were done with your rules. You're not. We're going back. I became the big picture because the philosophy opened me up as a learner, canvassing what it meant to be a driver without a permit, giving driving lessons in the classroom, using learning plans as my manual and exhibitions as my dashboard, leaving traditions in the rear view and giving me a closed course to practice on. I became a driver. But as I drive and steer around the cones of surface learning, it's your job, you as educators, to help me write out the directions, because we have all been lost before, and we know without that map, we are going nowhere, and no one wants to drive to the middle of nowhere. So give your students the maps, help them build the legends, but allow them to raise the scale, but build legends so they can become legends.